Hello and welcome to Level Up Your Genealogy 2 Research Bootcamp, where it's going to kind of retrain your brain to look at things differently. This class is all about strategy. A lot of the time, you're creating your own brick walls and your research problems because you are stuck looking at your research problem in one way. And I'm going to give you 23 different tips that are going to kind of adapt your brain and kind of reshape it so that you can look at things a different way, which will often break down brick walls. More often than not, the problem with your brick wall is not a lack of records, it's how you are looking at things, and you need to reorient your perspective. So I'm going to go through 23 different things that you'll immediately be able to apply to your own research. They're not like super niche strategies or tips. These are going to be things that might give you ideas of places you haven't checked yet or different approaches that you haven't tried. So one of the first things we're going to talk about is different ways you can evaluate and interpret census records. Now, these examples are specific to the US, but the general strategy would apply to a detailed census from anywhere, like England or Canada, any other types of censuses that have generally the same information. This is one of the things that's going to make you a better researcher, to just evaluate things and read between the lines. Don't just take things at face value. Don't just focus only on your direct ancestor. Focus on the household as a whole and the neighborhood too, the whole community. So there are often transcription errors when the genealogy websites transcribe and extract information from these records. There will be mistakes, omissions, and a lot of misread handwriting because a lot of it is done through AI now. And I mean, there were problems even when it was done by people, but there's not a lot of double checking now. The focus is on getting the records to you quickly rather than double checking everything. So you're no longer having to wait like a year for these records to be indexed. Now they're immediately available to you. So this is a really common thing I see in census records. When you get the record collection hint or just the record page on Ancestry, you get the list of everybody that's in the household. But if you're not opening up the record image to double check that that's accurate and that the names were accurate that were pulled onto that page, and you're just applying it to your tree without looking at it, you could be missing a lot of information. Like for instance, here we've got Margaret E. McFarlane, who is in the household of John Downey and his family, but she is not grouped together with the whole household. She does not show on that record summary page. So therefore you would entirely miss somebody if they just happened to be excluded from that record page. Sometimes there are additional details on that census image that were not transcribed and listed on that general summary page, the transcription. For instance, with this family here, it just said they were born in Austria. But when you open up the actual record image, you can see that it says Austria Bohemian. So you can then figure out that they were not from like Vienna. They were from Czech Republic or Slovakia. That's giving you that extra context, those extra details that just aren't showing up. Then the people below there, it says Russia was their birthplace, and that's all that was on like the summary page. You look in here, it says Russian, German. So that means that they are ethnically German and they are living in an area that's now part of the Russian Empire. So probably like what we would think of now as like parts of Poland that border modern day Germany. Sometimes you'll find information that's crossed out too. Like sometimes a census enumerator didn't follow directions and they did more than they were supposed to. And they might have written like the village in Germany that somebody was from and then cross it out and just write Germany. So you never know what you're going to find, and always look at the original image. The most important reason to open the census image is because you need to see like a full overview of the family. If you were just focusing on that one person from the summary, you're not seeing the whole family unit or their neighbors either. So it doesn't give you a full understanding. So, sorry, the little cameo window here is blocking part of the text. But for instance, opening up this family, it's going to put their life in more context. So if you look at those top two people, you can see their immigration year was 1903. They both have the same year. So they probably came over together. They probably knew each other back in their country of origin. Then you can look for them on the same passenger list because they probably came together, not a few months apart. The bottom two said 1874 and 1876. So you now know that this couple was a little bit less likely to have been married abroad. I mean, sometimes you do see the man go over a couple years earlier than the woman and the children follow, but a lot of times that means that they came over separately and then they may have married in the US. So you're going to look at them on separate passenger lists when you are searching. Now, those dates are not always correct for when somebody came over. They will vary, they will be incorrect a lot of the time. However, I have never yet seen a couple where one person says they came over 1 year and another person says they came over like um, the subsequent year. I've never seen anybody where they actually came together. So if they are stating different years, then they definitely did come at different points, even if it wasn't the exact correct year that they're referencing. Sorry, I don't know an easier way to explain it, but hopefully you know what I mean. I see this a lot where the summary page for the record would list James Allen, it's his household, and then it would list all of the other members of the household as Allens. So it can be hard to find people when they're not truly Allens. So it lumps everybody into the head of household's name. But if you go into the actual image, you can see that it's people of different names in the household. It's not that her middle name is Scott. Her surname was Scott. Martha Scott was living with James Allen. She's my third great grandmother, and she was orphaned, and so she lived with him. So if I hadn't opened this image, I would have never seen that that is her in the Allen household. The census is the #1 way for finding other family members to try to, group back together these family units. Because so often you will find that there are siblings or, parents and children living next door to each other on a census. So if I hadn't opened this census image for G.W. Doan, I would not have seen that he is next door to Jeremiah Doan because that doesn't show up in that summary page, doesn't show you the neighbors automatically. You need to go out and look. So then I look at the ages. Yeah, they're about the right age to be siblings. So then I'm going to look more into Jeremiah Doan. I also tend to page through the record images forward a few pages and backward a few pages to see if anybody else jumps out at me as potential family I should be following. Chain migration. People tended to move together. They didn't just go, oh, I'm just going to randomly head out to Norfolk, Nebraska from Kentucky with absolutely nobody there that I know. I'm just going to randomly do it. That rarely happened. Typically, you can find that people from one place move together to another place, whether it's, across the ocean or just within their country of residence. So opening the census image is another way for you to look for patterns and see people that may have all moved together, migrated together. Like looking at this Des Moines census for 1870, I can look at the neighbors here and I see a lot of common patterns. I see Ohio coming up a lot and Indiana. So that makes me wonder, did they all come from the same place? So if I'm having trouble tracing one of these people here, I should look at one of the neighbors that's also about the same age and from Ohio and see if I can figure out where they're from, because it might lead me to the records for the target person that I'm researching. I see so many client trees where nobody has added any siblings. They say they want to keep their tree clean, so they just want their direct lines only. I get a lot of client potential like inquiries for projects where people will say, yeah, but I don't want you to research any sibling. So then I know right there it's not a good fit for me because they're not grasping that you don't know which of the siblings is going to have the details you need for research because your ancestor was just not alone on an island. Their whole family contains records that can lead you to more details about prior generations and fill in blanks and add context. You can't just follow the direct line only because you will be easily misled and follow the wrong tree, climb the wrong tree. So if you don't follow out the siblings, you might miss which child has grandma or grandpa living in their household with them. This was a client case I had where they could not find the McClooney patriarch and what happened to him because they were only following their direct lines. They hadn't bothered to follow out the children, especially the daughters, to see where Elizabeth married James Fitzpatrick. And then right there in the household, her father, John McClooney, age 84. So you need to follow all of these people out, not necessarily the children of all of the siblings, but you should follow the siblings out enough to see if there's any additional information that's going to help your research or even contradict your research. I also use sibling records to look for variations in names. So it gives me an idea of what else I should be searching for. So looking in this example here, I've got Lauren White, who lists on his marriage record that his parents are J.F. White and Martha Scott, whereas Ross White lists his parents as James F. White and Maddie Scott. So those are clearly the same parents. These are clearly brothers, but this gives me different variations I should be searching for in the newspaper. This says that James likely went by his middle initial quite frequently, and sometimes by J.F. White. Sure enough, I looked in newspapers and I found loads of mentions for J.F. White and none that were right for just plain like James White. So this gives you more leads to follow. This also kind of helps you corroborate the information. Maybe you would see here that one person said Martha Scott was their mother, and another person that you thought was a full sibling might say that their mother was named Jane Allen. Then you probably have a half sibling situation. You might not have noticed that before. You might not have realized that it was a second wife. I had another client case where this family was going off of one death record for their direct ancestor that said his father was Anderson Allen. And they searched for 8 years trying to find Anderson Allen, and they just could not find him anywhere. So then I compared all of the records, marriage and death, for that guy's siblings, and everybody else but these people were researching said their father was named Andrew Allen. So you could be looking for somebody that doesn't exist if you don't try to corroborate the information through the other sibling records. Look through the death records too. See if the siblings all agree on names and birthplaces for parents. Although on a death certificate, the information is only as good as the person giving it. If you have a son-in-law that's giving the information, he may not have any idea and maybe just making things up. Or maybe you have somebody in a tremendous amount of grief and they are giving incorrect information. So just take it with a grain of salt anytime you are looking at the informant information that was not provided by the person you're researching, because it could be incredibly wrong. On US Census records from 1880 forward until, I think it's until the 1930s, until 1940, I think, people were asked the birthplace of their parents. So I use those census records to see if the siblings also corroborate the same place of birth for the parents. If not, You need to explore both variations to see which might be correct. We're going to talk about smarter searching and more intentional searching because that will make you a better researcher. So you need to understand how the search system works and also how hints work. So this example is going to be about ancestry specifically. So if I am researching and I see this potential hint pop up, so I've got Hannah Ann, and then it's popping up as an example for a potential mother of Hannah Greaves. Now, you have to understand where that information is coming from. This is just Ancestry's algorithms looking at other user trees and saying they have somebody like your Hannah Ann with those same dates, and then it's suggesting the mother that those people have in their tree and saying, do you want to add this? Never, ever add it. Do your own research and see if it's correct. You can look at other user trees and see if they have documentation to back it up, but this is not going off of anything verified, and the people that have this mother in the tree might not have a single shred of documents in their tree proving this relationship. So I would avoid ever adding these, and you can also turn them off in your settings as well so that you don't see these. They can cloud your judgment and make you think that it's correct just because Ancestry is showing you this name. And then you find records to try to fit this idea rather than looking at it objectively and trying to find the correct answer. I should add that that's the same way that all ancestry hints work, just like those green potential ancestor hints. It's just looking at another user's tree and saying they have these documents. Do you want to add them to yours? And you should not just automatically trust things. You should look it up yourself. So when you have somebody you want to search for from their ancestry profile, it's really easy to just click on that search button directly from their profile. But that drags in every bit of information you can possibly have recorded in your ancestry profile for that person, and it's not all relevant to what you're looking for. So let's say for Abby Shankland, I am only interested in her life prior to her marriage to Ross White. So I hit that search button, but everything that gets pulled in includes her death information, where she lived after she was married, all of her kids' names, where she's buried. That's not relevant to what I'm looking for, and that is going to cloud my results, make them less relevant. So I use that little pencil icon, and I remove everything that is irrelevant to what I'm looking for. So everything after or prior to her 1877 marriage. I leave that in there, what's prior to it. And then I search again and I get far more relevant results. If you are still having trouble getting the right information, sometimes some of those details are hidden behind the scenes and you can't delete it, you can't uncheck it. In that case, I would just start fresh with a brand new search and only enter scant information like name, birth year, and a place and research that way. On top of that, sometimes the birth dates are wrong on a record. Just because you know this birth date is correct doesn't mean it's recorded correctly on the record. So you need to expand your searching as well. When your records aren't showing up, you need to try some search tricks as well. So you can use wildcards when you're searching on most websites. So let's say I have somebody named Michael Popovich, but he was really Lithuanian. So his last name was actually Popovicius, but when he immigrated to the US, he used the name Popovski. They used a Polish variant. So I'm trying to search to find all variations that I can of this name and wildly different names. So I can just do POPO because that was constant on all variations. And then I can put an asterisk, and that will bring in all letter combinations after that asterisk. So it would bring in all of those different variations. You can also put a question mark in there just to replace one letter to be any possible letter. So if you're looking for like Hanson with an ON versus EN, though most sites, except for newspaper sites, will just automatically do sound decks. They sound alike, so it'll give you the same results of both spellings. So that's some different types of ways you can kind of trick the system to get more varied results. When you're having trouble finding records to show up, and they should be showing up, consider that the fields you're searching on might be blank on the record. So like with Eleanor Alderson here, if I am saying, that she was born in 1850 and I'm putting that as exact in my search, it's not going to show up on this record because the field for her age was left blank. So you're never going to get that record to show up because you're saying the value has to be 1850 and it's not on there. So the value here is 0. Same with if you're putting in a range of years. If I know she was born in 1850 and I think I'm expanding my range to say 1845 to 1855, 10-year range there, this still won't show up because the value is 0. Same with a place of birth. If you are only searching on people born in Ireland because you know she was born in Ireland, this won't show up because her place of birth on this census is blank. It is 0 for the value. So you start with the specific ways of searching and the specific fields that you know are correct, and then you start broadening it and broadening it if you're still not finding your answers. I guarantee you have somebody in your research where you cannot find them on a certain census. Here is a tactic that I use because usually you're not finding the person because their name was completely garbled by either the census enumerator or by the system that indexed it for searching. Now, it's very rarely just that somebody was missed on a census. That is very rare. So you just have to get creative in how you try to find them. So let's say I am trying to find George Olderich, and I know where he was in 1880, and I can't find him on the 1870 census. So what I would do is I would open up where he was living in 1880 and look around at some of his neighbors. And then I would try to find one of them on the 1870 census, like William Woodward. Maybe if I look him up, or better yet, Dinah Woodward, that's a more unique name. Always search on the more unique names. I would search for Dinah Woodward then in the 1870 census. And then I would look at the image and look and see if perhaps George Olderich was next door and his name was just completely way off. And that would be one way where you can find your people. Look at those around them and see if you can find those people on the record. It was very common, especially around the time of the Civil War and earlier, for a woman with small children to just become widowed and immediately remarry. So sometimes the person you're missing on a census, you're missing them because they're using their stepdad's surname. So a lot of times when I can't find somebody, I go out and search for a remarriage of the mom. And then sometimes I find all of the children there in the household with their stepfather. And there's like no legal adoption needed to take place or anything. Or a legal name change, they just have a new name. So a lot of times when somebody reaches their majority, they go back to their birth name. So you don't even know that that stepfather ever existed if you're just looking at names. For instance, here, John Sparks, he went back to his birth name when he was an adult, but when he was 2 years old, he has his stepfather's surname. So he's a Buxton. So I could only find that by looking for Hannah and seeing where Hannah Sparks remarried to Edward Buxton. So a good way to look for things like this is to search only on first name. Here it would be better like looking for Simon rather than John, because there will be a lot fewer results for Simon, searching only on first name, than there would be for John. I have yet to figure out why this is, but a lot of times you will see a random census where all of the children in the household have their name flipped and they have their middle name listed instead of their first name. I see it so much and it's very odd. So make sure when you're looking at these records that you're not mistaking George C. Murray as a different person than Clarence Murray, because you can see the ages are the same and the name is very similar. So don't think that they are separate people when in fact they're the same person. Censuses in the US prior to 1850 only listed head of household and then had everybody in the household in age and gender brackets. So it can be really tough to trace these families prior to 1850, but it's not impossible. I see a lot of people that just get disheartened by it and they do not even try to get the right information out of this. And you can do it. There are various spreadsheets that you can buy online that can do lots of fancy things for this. But I often just use Google Sheets because it's a free spreadsheet and I can just create the columns that exist on the census and then put the equivalent birth years that those brackets would fall into. And then I take account based on the census to determine if it's the same family from census to census. Also, if you find a woman listed in here on one of these pre-1850 censuses, you can be reasonably certain she is widowed because you would not find just a woman living independently in that time. Note that the different brackets for year born vary from census to census. So if you analyze all of them, you can kind of start to narrow down a birth date. And remember that if your John Downey was born in 1839, that 1840 census hint for a John Downey will not be him because he would not be a head of household at 1 year. So pay attention. Typically, a man would not be head of household until after he's married. Look for name clues in families. Like here we've got Robert Davidson McFarland. That seems like kind of an unusual middle name. What do you bet his mother was a Davidson? See if there are any siblings that have surname clues or very unique names, like I can't think of one, like Absalon or something like that. A really unusual name that you would not expect to find, Lemuel, something like that, and see if that could be a family name and if you can find other people that have that name. I did a client case yesterday for Polish immigrants, and I was able to piece the right family together because several members of the family had named a daughter either Galan or Galan, Galann, and that was really unusual. So look for those different clues because that can help you piece together the right family. Some cultures have naming patterns too. So here's an example of the Irish naming pattern. You can look this up online and then also look at the children of your target person you're researching and their children and see if they seem to be following this. People didn't tend to just sort of follow it. They either followed it or they didn't. And you should be able to see if they were following it or not based on the children's names and the order. So you can sometimes use something like this to predict the names of the couple, their parents' names of the couple. So you can look at this and guess what their paternal grandfather's name was. It's not always going to be right, and especially not if both of the parents had a father named James, then you're not going to have two sons named James. But it will give you at least some clues to follow. Finding your ancestors' religion can also open up another avenue of research, and sometimes you need to kind of read between the lines to figure it out. Cemeteries can help that. Don't just apply that find a grave hint and move on. Actually, look at the name of the cemetery. Here we've got Turkey Creek Baptist Church Cemetery. That's where Andrew Allen was buried. So then my next step should be to look and see if Turkey Creek Baptist Church is still on that same lot with the cemetery. If it's not, I need to try to find out what happened to the records for Turkey Creek Baptist Church. One of the best ways to do that is just look on Google Maps and type in Baptist Church. See what shows up nearby. Call them. Because a lot of times they will just say, oh yeah, we have the Turkey Creek Baptist Church records in our basement. Let's go get them. You never know until you ask. If you're not finding any leads that way, try the County Historical Society, the City Hall, the local library, or the courthouse. There are starting to be more church records available online, but still the bulk of the church records are going to be offline. Typically, if a church is torn down, the records are not just destroyed. They are going to be given either to like a denominational archive or to another church in the area. Less likely that they will just go to like a state archive. It often stays within the church denomination. But there are more and more records becoming available online. I recommend that you just contact, again, like historical societies, anything you can think of, the nearest churches of that denomination, and ask what happened to the records. I had a recent client case too, where I contacted a church about church records once I figured out which church was the closest to the people I was researching. And the people emailed me back within an hour of kind of cell phone photos of all of the church records that they had compiled and put in a Google Drive. And they said, here you go, look away, have fun. You never know what you're going to get, but you do need to take that extra step and contact a church and see what they might have. A lot of churches are short-staffed as well, and they get a lot of these requests. Obviously, the farther east you go in the US, the more requests a church probably gets because it's older. So it really doesn't hurt to send a small donation as well. Or you can just send an email saying, I'm going to contact you about this, and I'm going to send you a $10 donation for your time. That'll often get you better results too. There are other clues for figuring out what religion your ancestor may have been. A lot of those civil marriage records will state a minister's name. It may not say the denomination. So you can either just Google their name and that location and figure out which denomination or which church they were a reverend for. You can use census documents too to figure out where they lived, which church it was near. You can also look in newspapers for that person's name because obituaries will also often list who conducted the funeral too. Or look like county histories or just even books.google.com, where it has a lot of old books that might list all of the Presbyterian ministers in Wisconsin in the 1840s, something like that. You have to just get creative to figure out which religion your ancestor may have been. Another thing you can do is follow the children. See if all of the children were married in a Lutheran church, or if all of the children have records from the Catholic Church, from a local Catholic area. You just have to kind of piece together and read between the lines. Make sure you have a timeline of records and figure out what you're missing. So I'm looking here at Maddie Scott, and I see she was born in 1835, and then I look at the census records I have for her. I should look for her 1850 census. I don't have that in here. You need to make sure you're collecting all records that should be available. Now, Ancestry will automatically give you a timeline of your ancestor's life, but the sources will not be listed in order where they occurred. They will be listed alphanumerically. Maps are absolutely essential in research, and I find that Most genealogists aren't using them for researching their own families. You need to see if your family was near a county or state border because you should be looking for records on the other side of the border too. Your ancestor didn't just stay put in the exact spot where they lived. And a lot of times, maybe the boundaries changed around them as well, especially like if they were living in modern day West Virginia. If they were back in the 1800s, they were in Virginia. It was all Virginia. So you need to pay attention to that and understand how that worked. I have a lot of client cases where a family was living like in Maine, and I look on a map, just plain old Google Maps, and I see that the place they lived in Maine is right on the border with New Brunswick. So I started looking in New Brunswick. Sure enough, all of their church records were in New Brunswick. Was somebody living on a river? Because that would make travel a lot easier before railroads existed, like the Ohio River, like from Louisville and around through there. That makes travel a lot easier. Plot out distances on Google Maps. If you're not sure if this is the right guy that you're researching and you've got him in 1860 in Maine, and in 1861, he's in the middle of Georgia. And in 1862, he is back fathering a child in Massachusetts. Probably not your guy. That is probably too far. So plot those distances. Was it, actually feasible? You need to know when a county was formed and when a state was formed. There is this website that can help you visualize when different areas, became jurisdictions. Like if your ancestor lived in a certain county by 1850 and the county where he died wasn't formed until 1870, then you need to find out what the name of the county was prior to 1870 because he would have records in both counties. He was a resident of both counties even though he didn't move. The borders moved around him. Same with countries. Like if somebody stayed in the same spot in, I don't know, in like Slovakia, they would have been a resident of the Austro-Hungarian Empire for a while, and then a member or a resident of Slovakia for a while, and it changes, and you need to be aware of that so that you're looking for records in the right place. Here are a few of my favorite map sites. David Rumsey Map Collection is free to use. He has loads of different types of maps. Historic MapWorks, also free to use, and this will be really good for those county plat maps. So those county plat books that show where all of the land was located within a township and who owned it when. Also MapCarta. I use that a lot for European research because it'll show tiny villages or even farms that aren't listed on Google Maps. Like in Sweden and in Norway, it will list farms by name, and you can find your ancestor's exact farm in Scandinavia where that does not show up on Google Maps. The Library of Congress has a lot of free maps that you can use as well. Railroad maps are really helpful because you can see when the railroad reached a certain town. Or there are panoramic maps where you can zoom in and see different street names, and then homes are even illustrated. So if you know that your family was at 300 Maple Street in Pittsburgh, you can zoom in on this map and you can see 300 Maple Street. The Sanborn fire insurance maps, they weren't created for genealogists. They were created to assess the likelihood of fire for urban areas so that they could, assess fire insurance rates based on that. But you might be able to look at where your ancestor lived and see, oh, they lived above a butcher shop or something like that. All free on Library of Congress. I rarely see people going after cemetery records. They assume that if it's not online, they can't access it, or if they contact the cemetery, there won't be any value in the cemetery record. It won't say anything, but it can really help a lot. So first try to find a cemetery just on Google. Maybe they'll have a website, maybe they'll have a phone number. If they don't, then I would try the city hall, the library, county courthouse. If even that is a bust, then I would just look on Google Maps and see if there is a business nearby and ask them if they know who mows the cemetery and if you can get in touch with them. And maybe they will say, oh, yeah, the records are here in this Tupperware bin that I have in the mowing shed, and they'll help you. Find out if it was affiliated with a church at any point. Also, these records might have information you don't expect to find. Like it might say who purchased the cemetery plot, giving you further ideas of if you have the right family or not. One of my most valuable things that I find from doing this is that they might say, oh, yeah, John Downey is burial 3 in the family plot, and I thought he should have been the first one. So I need to figure out who else was burial 2 and burial 1, because maybe it's his parents. It's going to be tempting to find one of these lineage books, like the Daughters of the American Revolution one, or just general family histories, and then just trust it and follow it. But don't do it. These are not a primary source. They are rife with errors, and most of these were compiled in a time before records were easily available. So even if somebody was accepted to a lineage society through one of these, it might be easy to disprove now with how easily we can access records. So this is a client case I had where I was easily able to disprove this. So look for supporting documents to prove these things. Don't just automatically assume them to be correct. You can also look for certain ancestors on the Daughters of the American Revolution site or the Sons of the American Revolution site for free. They both have ancestor search pages where you can type in the name of your Revolutionary War patriot and you can see if anybody else has applied and been accepted under that person's name. You can also even order the packets, the application packets, which might give you more information because they would have had to provide sources in order to join. You will also find some people that may have disproven the different applications that were previously accepted, and it'll have a little note in there saying that this has actually been disproved or it's under investigation. I can't stress this enough. Always find the original record. Do not rely on the index. And I'm going to show you an example of why. So I've got this Indiana marriage record from 1878, and it says the marriage place was Assumption Church in Evansville, Vanderburgh County, Indiana. And I didn't think this was the right family because Katie Gallagher should have been in Kentucky. So I was trying to figure out what was going on here because she did marry a John Davidson. So I see on Ancestry that it says FHL film number. So I'm going to go out to Family Search and try to find that Family History Library film number. That's what it means. FHL is on Family Search. So you go out to familysearch.org and click on Catalog. If you have not used Family Search, it's free to use always. You just need to create a free username and password. I take that Family History Library film number and copy it. I change the search for to be Film Fiche image group number, and I just paste it right in there. Then I find the original document. And it shows that it was just recorded in Evansville, Indiana. And it was for Reverend Dillon of Kentucky. So he was a circuit rider preacher, and he would marry people and then record it back in Evansville. So she never set foot in Evansville. This is the right people because she was in rural Kentucky. So it can throw your research way off if you don't find these details. Like I would have been then looking for the whole family in Evansville, Indiana, and they were never there. So always find the original document. More often than not, if Ancestry doesn't have the original, Family Search will. You will come across name changes and aliases more frequently than you would think. So I had this case where Fred G. Hall married a woman and then immediately disappeared. And there were just these two known photos of him, and that was it. The family had no idea what happened to him. So I used photos and signatures to try to link the identity. I used the client's DNA matches to figure out some different surnames to follow that were in her line and would have come from his line. So I found a link on the Hall line that should be like Fred G. Hall's family. So this photo of one of the surnames that showed up of de Revere was of a young Harold Frederick de Revere, who looks suspiciously like the older photo of Fred G. Hall. So I started looking at signatures. That's an amazing way to figure out these aliases. So especially like World War I and World War II documents, the draft cards. So I found the signature from his marriage, Fred G. Hall, and then I found a draft card of Harold Frederick de Revere, and those are the same person. People were not trying to disguise their signature because who was going to ever link it back to them? So employ those signatures, employ those photos to try to identify people. You'll find that sometimes people just inexplicably change their names too. So I had a client case for Walter Adams Rice, and he wrote his name that way his entire life. And every online tree had him attributed to a couple in Massachusetts who were named Rice. But I found conflicting records of my individual showing that they were definitely different men with concurrent records. So then I had an idea. What if he just flip-flopped his name? So I searched for that. Sure enough, he had. No idea why, but he was born as Walter Rice Adams. And he was not estranged from his family either. He just happened to switch it. Perhaps he just liked how it sounded better. After you've gone through all the big genealogy websites and you are ready to move on to other resources, online archives can help. My little window here is blocking, but it says archive grid down below there. These archives can be a huge help because you can find historical books, manuscript collections, letters, family Bibles, annual school district reports, yearbooks, loads of different things, but they're all different. So you're not going to have any idea until you really go and look. Archive Grid is a free online database of over 7 million records from like 14 different institutions that are represented here. They won't always have the item available and digitized online, but it'll at least show you where it's housed. So instead of going to every single archive, in New York and look on their website to see exactly what they have, I can just go to this one central hub and look here. Another one is Hati Trust. It looks like Hathi, but it's Hati Trust. And it's a free digitized archive with 18 plus million digitized items available to view. So you won't have to go to a different place. You can just look on here. Everything on here is digitized. And you'll find a lot of old books, old histories, things that are in the public domain that really might help your research. Internet Archive is another free archive you should be using. It's full of free books, movies, software, music, and websites. It's also home to the Wayback Machine, which is an archive of websites. It has little snapshots of websites that no longer exist. But the key is that somebody has to have taken that website and archived it for it to be there. It's not going to just automatically have every website that's ever existed. Somebody had to actually take that step and do it. You may be surprised to learn that some research problems can be solved easily by simply Googling your ancestor because it can pull information from digitized books, websites with historical information, historical societies, family genealogy websites, genealogy forum questions and discussions. Local history websites that mention that somebody had like a dry goods store on Main Street in 1870. The best way to search is to put quotes around the exact phrase you're looking for or the exact name, because then it will only return results where those two words show up sequentially, not just within a paragraph of each other. And then I usually add the location on there as well. When you have regiment information on a Union or Confederate soldier, there's a free and easy way to find out more about their service, too. You'll find enlistment info, discharge info, prisoner of war info, and pension application info for a lot of Civil War soldiers on both sides, on Ancestry or on Family Search. I see the most on Ancestry, probably because they own Fold 3, so they have the largest collection of military records. So whenever you see a document like this for a Union soldier, this means that there is possibly a huge packet that could be up to like 500 pages long at the National Archives because this person applied for a pension. So you have to order it from there, though, unfortunately. But some Confederate soldiers did receive pensions, but those are at the county or state level where they were residing, not necessarily where they served from. And remember that some people served both armies. So consider looking for your Confederate soldier in the Union records as well. So I've got Gardner Hickok here, and he was part of Company A in the 46th Iowa Infantry, and I'm going to learn more about his unit's service. So I go out to the Civil War Record Soldier search page on the National Park Service website, and I enter my soldier's name. And you'll see a thing at the top that says, this website is no longer updated, or this database is no longer updated. A lot of people contact me and they say, well, it doesn't work because it's no longer updated. It's still there. It's still housed there. They're just not adding to it. So if every known soldier has already been added to it, it doesn't really matter if they're not updating it. So understand the wording there. It's not meaning you can't use it. It's just meaning they're not adding new people to it. So there's only one Gardner R. Hickok in all of the Civil War service. If he hadn't have just shown up right there at the top, I could have used those little filters on the left side to sort by Union, Confederate, and state to find the right person. And it pulls up all of his details when I click on his name. And I know it's the right person because I had already found his unit and regiment from the other record to know that that matched the right person and wasn't somebody that had a different wife's name or other details. So you click on that regiment and then it takes you to the battle unit details, which is going to talk about the dates and the movement of where this regiment went, along with how many enlisted men were killed and how many enlisted men died by disease. Then you can click on View Battle Units Soldiers to see the whole population of that battle unit. Can't stress this enough either. Family Search Wiki should always be your first stop when researching somewhere or something new. I did not employ this for the first several years that I researched, and it was a huge mistake. As you can tell, I use it for everything, but the best way to access these free resources is by just searching Family Search Wiki and then the location of the topic you're looking for. And I'll show you some examples. Like in here, Palermo, Sicily, and then it's going to take me right to it. Rather than going to Family Search and then clicking on Research Wiki and then using that search, this will be way easier for you to do it. Just use Google. And it's going to have all of the resources that are basically known. And yes, it's editable and people can add things, but you have to be vetted first. You have to pass a test to become qualified to edit the Family Search Wiki, so information on there is reliable. Here's an example of the Family Search Wiki page for Sangamon County, Illinois, which is where Springfield, Illinois is. It's going to show you the courthouse information. It's going to show you known record start dates, which is huge. You can see right here that it says starting dates for major county records for birth and death is 1877. You can see right underneath there that statewide registration did not begin until 1916 with general compliance by 1922. This is huge. You can potentially go back to 1877 with births and deaths at the county level. And the different categories, like court records here, for example, will link to both paid and free sites. Like it will list collections in Family Search or collections on Ancestry, and they'll put a little dollar mark by it to show it's a subscription site, or it might link to things entirely outside of the big genealogy websites that you might not even know about. Like in this example, if I had just been looking for Sangamon County court records on a Family Search in the catalog, I would not have known that those are actually found at the Illinois Regional Archives Depository, or IRAD, at the University of Illinois, and they're right here. So don't spend time looking for records that don't exist. That is a huge waste of time. Go here first and find what does exist and links to it, because you don't know what you don't know. And you might not be able to find the records unless you are steered toward them on a different site you've never even heard of. In addition to location-based resources, it also has like reading aids and different topics too. Like here in this example, many Polish records are written in Russian. So I Googled Family Search Wiki Polish records in Russian, and it took me straight to a reading aid page. Shows you examples of what the records look like, and then it has a line-by-line explanation of what it would say so that you can simply compare that to the record you're looking at. Because here's the deal. You may have a full page record for a birth record, but very little in there isn't boilerplate language, meaning the same entry for same exact wording for every single entry. You just need to learn to pick out the names in here. You do not need to read the whole thing. And this will help you see which things through these patterns are the details you need to abstract from this in order to fully use this record. One of the most common questions I get is how to find certain military records. So this would work for any country too. I just Google Family Search Wiki, US military records. Family Search Wiki, Canadian military records. Family Search Wiki, French military records. And it'll take you right to a page. It has categories by conflict or by record type. It'll give you research strategies, figuring out how to find a town of origin, shows you which records you can find on Fold3 or Ancestry or Family Search. It'll tell you which records exist only at the National Archives, which National Archives location to contact, any known record loss, and exactly how to contact places to ask for records and who is eligible to do so. So it's a one-stop shop for every type of record, and you would be remiss not to go check this out. In my Level Up 1 class, I go through how to use the Family Search catalog. So I'm just going to show a quick example for that too. It's not as in-depth as that class, but it's just a reminder that you should be using the Family Search catalog. On Family Search, it's often best to do, more targeted research, intentional research in a collection instead of just wide open, because they have so many records. I had a recent client case that involved an 1800s research question in Palermo, Sicily, trying to find marriage and birth records in Palermo, figure out what village a family came from. Ancestry did have an index for some years for those records, but no images at all. So I knew that I needed to go look in the Family Search catalog and see if I could find any unindexed image-only records that I could page through. So I go to the catalog and I type in Palermo, Italy, and I want the town of Palermo, or it gives me two options there, the region of Palermo or the town of Palermo. So I click on the town. So it brings up loads of civil registration, so birth, marriage, and death records, which is exactly what I'm looking for. And these are not searchable by name. You can't just click on the magnifying glass and enter your name. You have to look through the images. Now, these will all eventually be added into full text search so that you can search for a name and it will search the images to find it. So this isn't going to be like this forever on all records, but it will probably be a few years until they have everything added to full text search, because they have over 5 million images and are adding more every day. So clicking on that record collection brings up a whole page of thumbnail images, 946 here in this collection. And then you can start looking through indexes to the various volumes, trying to find the family that you're looking for. And sometimes you'll have to open up the images here. It may not have an index telling you which page, and then you can find the information. And just like with the Polish record in Russian, it's going to be boilerplate language. So you can find a reading aid on the Family Search Wiki that will help you figure out which details are relevant in here and not just the standard writing for all entries. These records are the same ones that you might find at like a country's digital archive, but it'll be a lot easier to just use Family Search because you know how to use it. You always need to keep learning because you'll never know everything about genealogy. I watch even like the simplest webinars and I learn something new every time. You cannot be, a magical expert on everything because different types of research are so nuanced. So I highly recommend Legacy Family Tree webinars. I watch these constantly. I watch them when I'm walking the dog. I listen to them while I'm driving, while I'm cooking. And you can watch them live or within 7 days when they air on a replay for free without being a paid member. Or you can pay $49 per year at a huge value to have access to the full 2,000 plus webinars. So I highly recommend this site. I do have one webinar on there about Russian language, but these will be immensely helpful. And then usually every Thanksgiving-ish, they have a 50% off sale for an annual membership. So incredible value for education. Cindy Engel compiled Cindy's list, starting back in like 1996. She's been gathering genealogy related links. Now, it can be kind of hard to use, but you will find a lot of things on here you don't find elsewhere that just a general Google search would probably not lead you to. So it's definitely worth a look. Kind of some obscure record links. So it's free, so you might as well go check it out. Conference Keeper is another great website. It's a comprehensive resource hub for conferences and genealogy events, announcements, YouTube channels, websites, podcasts, etc. And Tammy will send you a weekly update on genealogy events and other genealogy news. She will not spam your inbox. It will be very useful information. So you should sign up for her email list so that you will know about the different virtual events that are coming up for free or about in-person conferences you may want to attend. I think it's very worthwhile to subscribe to newsletters, especially like the National Archives. Maybe once every 2 to 3 months, they will send you an email that will talk about new record sets that are being released or something like that. And they will not spam your inbox. Same with Fold 3 and Ancestry. You might get occasional updates from them about new record collections that you just wouldn't be aware of if you did not get that notification. Let's talk about a research strategy called the Fan Club, friends, associates, and neighbors. And this is where you research the people that show up on your ancestors' records as witnesses or as somebody signing for a marriage bond or somebody as a witness to a land deed, and see if you can find a relationship or if everybody came from the same original place in England or something like that. So pay attention to these witnesses. Start to figure out if your ancestor returned the favor. Maybe this person gave an affidavit for something and then your ancestor did for them. Pay attention to these people that surround your ancestor because, again, they did not live on an island. Pay attention to those in their orbit. When your research inevitably takes you to another country and you're dabbling in their records, don't use that little icon to change the whole website into English. There will be a lot less information on the English version than there will be by just right-clicking in your browser and translating it to English. So remember that if there are any names or like towns that are translatable nouns, then they will be translated into English as well. So sometimes I leave the original open, then translate one to English, and I kind of go back and forth and compare. It's also important that you need to be on the website that is used by the people you are wanting to connect with. So, for instance, MyHeritage works in 42 different languages. Let's say you want to connect with some Croatian cousins that are distant. You would look on here and see on MyHeritage that you've got Hrvatski as a language. Croatian people can come on here and they can use their own language. I don't believe Ancestry has a Croatian setting. So this would be the best way for you to have a presence on here and find those people, like through the MyHeritage DNA test. MyHeritage was more widely marketed across Europe. So you're more likely to find those cousins have taken like a MyHeritage DNA test or that they house their tree on here. Many people stop with a newspaper search with just the location for the person and the year the person died. They just want that obituary and that's it, and they move on. But you are missing so much more information. You can find land sales, marriage announcements, what else? Like divorce proceedings, other legal issues like the Salvatore Guglielmini family here in court. If I had just looked for the obituary, I would have never found all the crime family information. Or if I had just searched on an obituary, I would not find the little gossip news bits like Mrs. Sadie Collins and granddaughter Alice Kathleen Moore arrived Sunday from Topeka. You've got to look and look more broadly to find all of this information. Sometimes you'll even find people mentioned in a 50 to 100 years ago column, like a remember when column. I have written a full research guide about Family Search full text search, but I'm going to show you just a little bit in here about it. It was released in February of 2024, and it's an absolute game changer for genealogists. It is OCR software, optical character recognition. So that is what can search a record image, and you can search on any words, and it can just find them on the page. It's not perfect, but it is the best thing to happen to genealogy since the internet began. Now, before you had to go to Family Search Labs and turn it on and add it because it was just an experiment. But now it is widely available on Family Search just from their search tab. You'll find full text. I think it's number 2 right there in the dropdown. They will be adding all of their unindexed images to this, but it'll take a while to do because each time they have to train it on a new language. So they're starting with English language records because it's already trained on English. And then they're working through the other languages. So eventually it'll all be here. But you will enter first just a name. And I usually put quotes around the first and last name so it'll return them in order and not just James on this line and White down here. So that will help you. Then look at the different full text search tips they have and follow those. You can also put names in keywords too if you want them to like intersect. Like let's say I knew Catherine Smith married Joseph Cumberland. I might put Cumberland in the name category and Smith in the keyword category to see what appears together in searches in a document. I usually just enter the name and then I filter by place afterwards because I think that's better to start broad and then narrow down from there. You can also search in a specific collection. You can just browse the collection or start to type a title and then see what they have based on that information. So let's say I had typed in Owen Breedlove and I put it in quotes. Then I just looked and only 3 records came up. 2 in Russell County, Virginia, 1 in Shenandoah County, Virginia. So then I know more of a precise place to look. I use this a lot when I'm just trying to determine where a family may have lived. I just find the most unique name I can and I just see all the different occurrences of it. And here's an example of something that this couldn't do before. We couldn't do this prior to the invention of full text search. I knew that Owen Breedlove was from this specific area. But here, full text search is showing me that he purchased a kettle in 1845 from Catherine Litton's estate sale. Could that be a relative? Could that be another breadcrumb to follow? I couldn't have found this before because even if there was an index in the images here, in the front or the back that was, handwritten, it would have only been categorized and entered as Catherine Litton. You have no idea who else is in the estate, especially in that estate sale. It was not listed. So now you can find these connections you would have never been able to find before. You can also look on keywords you couldn't search on before. Let's say I know that my family lived on Bone Creek. I can just search for Bone Creek in a certain county, and it's going to show me all the other people that lived on Bone Creek as well and any mentions of it. So it can help you narrow down place and time and all of the neighbors. So I no longer offer online classes. You can check out my research guides in my online shop. I have loads of them that I'm working on in my brain all the time, and they can really, really help your research. Follow these different accounts to see daily genealogy tip videos. I typically post the same things across all of them. A little bit less on Blue Sky because they often have a file size limit. But this is your best way to get all of the genealogy news and to learn all the tips and tricks that I uncover as a professional genealogist. Thanks for attending.